Hello and welcome to Doing Okay. I'm Dan and today I am doing a review in progress of Jessica Jones Season 2. I had hoped to watch all of Season 2 over the weekend after it came out, but life gets in the way. Sometimes watching 13 episodes in a couple days just can't happen. So I'm going to be talking about episodes 1 through 7, so spoiler warning on those, and give you my thoughts as I'm in the middle of the season here. And then what I'm hoping to do is finish the season this week. I do a full season 2 review with Olga later in the week, and I'll keep you updated on that over on @DoingOkVideo over on Twitter. I love Jessica Jones Season 1. Jessica Jones is one of my favorite comic book shows, if not my favorite. I think the character is awesome. I think Kristen Ritter does a really, really good job. I do think there are some issues with Season 1, but Season 2 I've been really enjoying so far. I do think it's weaker than Season 1. Not having Kilgrave is really tough, not having someone as menacing as David Tennant to really ground the stakes and make it scary on top of everything else is a tough void to deal with. That said, I still think Season 2 is really, really enjoyable so far. I'm just so connected with these characters, and I just enjoy watching their lives and them dealing with their struggles and their character development and stuff like that. So I think the biggest problem with the first half of Season 2 is how slow things are. But at the same time, personally, I'm okay with that because I like these characters so much and I enjoy just seeing them live their lives to a certain degree. That said, I do think the stakes feel very low, and I think that, yeah, okay, we're building up some interesting things here with IGH, and obviously with the big reveal of her mother, that's a big deal, and I'm sure in the second half things are about to get a lot heavier. But not that much has happened in this 7 episodes, and that's a lot of episodes. And if you're not a diehard person like me, I don't know that you would have gotten this far into the season necessarily. Because if you're like, oh, I liked Season 1, I'm interested to see what happens in Season 2, and you get 4 episodes in, and it's like, well, I don't know that everyone's going to necessarily get, sucked back in the same way. That said, I do think one of the biggest issues with Season 1 was, yes, the stakes were really, really high with Kilgrave, but then it was drawn out over 13 episodes, and it was like, oh, things are really high from the beginning, and then the fact that you can't really maintain that as well, and then it's like, well, why is this being drawn out so much? Whereas here, I feel like we're getting a slow build, which ultimately, by the end of the season, I might think actually pacing-wise worked out better. We'll see. I'm glad that they've trimmed some of the fat with some of the side characters like Robin and stuff. I think Malcolm's doing an awesome job this season. I really like what they're doing with that character, where he really does care so much and he is a good person, but they're showing complexities there. They're showing things like him threatening Irina, I believe her name was, showing him punching the guy who preyed on Trish. So he has some issues to work out. He's still dealing with the addiction stuff and now he's sleeping with all these women, and he's sort of struggling to figure out who he is. I like him, trying to become an investigator and his struggle with Jessica and her starting to give a little and letting him be an associate and all that stuff's really cute. Trish, I think, is also getting a great arc this season. I think that she is a gem of the show. The actress does such a good job as Trish, and she's such a nuanced character. She cares so much, but I love that they really ground that, especially this season, in like her need to feel special and her need to feel like she's worthwhile and like she's, living a meaningful life. So it's like, okay, she wants to do good things, but is it totally for the right reason? And it's like, well, it kind of is, and like, how much does it matter? And she's willing to do whatever it takes to, do something extraordinary and do things to help people. But clearly she's revisiting her addiction stuff through this inhaler. And I think that's really interesting. And especially when they connect her with Malcolm, I'm sure the fact that, he's dealt with this addiction stuff before, he can't be long until he sees what's going on with her. At the same time, we know from the comics that she's going to become Hellcat. So it's like, I don't know that much about that character, to be honest, from the comic books. But clearly, she's going to some way get her to become a hero in some way, I feel like. And it's going to be an interesting balance of, can she do this through the addiction thing? Is she going to overcome the addiction but find some other way to get powers? Or she can just do stuff without powers? The Griffin storyline I thought was actually really interesting. I was really annoyed when they were making him seem evil. I was like, please don't make this guy evil. This is such an obvious twist or whatever. The fact that he ended up being, just trying to propose to her, I think was a nice touch. He's a really nice guy. And the fact that the real twist there was that Trish just dumps him, I think is really interesting. And I'm wondering if that's the end of the character. In some ways, I think that would be a really cool moment for Trish's character. It's heartbreaking, and I feel like as an audience member and anyone who cares about Griffin, who seems like a good guy, it's like, well, why can't, like, hopefully they can make it work. But at the same time, her being like, oh, I guess I wanted something of that spotlight that he had and his shine to, like, hit me too, and for me to become more like him, and I didn't really love him, I think is a really interesting turn for the character. Now, as far as Jess goes, we're obviously dealing with her anger management stuff. I remember in season 1, I was like, how can they possibly top Kilgrave as far as how important the story is to who she is core as a character? It's like, this was like her definitive moment of dealing with Kilgrave, was like what made her who she is. Now, I was silly. They, of course, bring it in back to the core of who she is, which is her parents dying, her family dying, being experimented on. So it's all about feeling like a freak, feeling like a misfit, feeling alone, and then dealing with that trauma and going back and dealing with that anger. I think that that's really cool, and she certainly is such a flawed character, especially this season. And seeing her have to deal with the police so much, she can't just go around like a lot of other superheroes and just get away with everything. Constantly, she's struggling to just, not get evicted and things like that. Speaking of which, I think the painter guy is really nice. I like his performance. It's nice for her to have someone like that. I don't see it lasting long term, but it's a nice little side thing for her. And saying that we have this rival private investigator, and I think that, like, could have been used more than it has been, honestly, but they are sort of slowly building him up as more and more of a villain towards her, as now he, blames her for his friend's death and all that stuff, and it's like, I did really like her losing her shit on him and the consequences of that. And now, one of the only low points for me, really, this season has been Jerry. He's a good character. I think the ALS storyline is interesting. When I cut to her, it feels like such a side story. And yes, just like last season, it eventually swings back around, it connects into IGH, and that's interesting and everything, but at least for the first 3 or 4 episodes, it's just like, oh, here she is over here doing things completely unrelated to everything, and I feel bad for her, but I also don't really necessarily like her. It's like, okay, I guess I'll keep watching because I know it's going to connect eventually, but it's certainly not necessarily stuff that I'd want to rewatch if I was rewatching season 2. But let me know what you guys think about that. Do you like Jerry more than I do? Now, the biggest thing here that I haven't talked about yet is the mother revelation. Having Jessica's mother be at least so far, it seems like the big bad of the season. I felt silly that, I personally did not see this one coming. And I'm interested if you let me know in the comments below how many of you did. I don't know if this is something from the comics. I've read some Alias stuff, but not a ton. My feeling was just, her family's dead, and this villain is just going to be a foil for her. It's like an eviler version of her. It's like what could happen to Jessica if, she went even further down the deep end. She was relating to her so much that I was like, okay, that she's just going to be like dark Jessica and, help her face her own demons and face her anger issues because she doesn't want to be like that. This is a whole other level that definitely, kicked the season up a few notches. And in some ways, I wish they had found a way to get to this revelation a little bit earlier. But it's definitely cool, and I really liked episode 7, especially because having all those flashbacks, getting to see younger Jessica and younger Trish and what they were struggling with, I thought was great. The revelation of her mother killing her boyfriend at the time, I thought was really well done. It makes sense why she stayed away for so long. We're taking this idea of anger issues and, giving the mom a sci-fi, heightened version of the anger issue problem, and it's a good way for her for Jessica to see a sort of mirror of herself. And obviously, she doesn't have the level of psycho trauma that her mom does, but she can certainly learn something from that too. It's going to be interesting to see how much the mom is the villain of the season versus the doctor. They are definitely building an interesting, nuanced villain here with the mom, in that she doesn't always necessarily have control over what she's doing. She just wants to protect her daughter, and the fact that her daughter is the one who has to stop her definitely creates an interesting dynamic there. I'm really excited to watch the back half and talk to you about it more. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Maybe I can read some of those in the second video with the whole season. But please, if you're going to mention any spoilers beyond episode 7, please mark it like that. Please like, subscribe, share this video. I am so thankful for you watching it out there in the interwebs, and have a marvelous day.